Mom left me at 11 for her boyfriend, came back at 15. After grandma died saying, "I'm ready to be your mom again," I chose foster care instead. Now she found me on Facebook, and I reminded her that she chose D and vodka. Over me now, she is begging. Hey Reddit, my biological mother abandoned me at 11 for her boyfriend. Showed up 4 years later after my grandma died, expecting me to fall into her arms. I chose foster care instead. Best decision of my life. Now she's found me on Facebook and wants to reconnect. I reminded her exactly what she missed. Buckle up because this one's a ride. I'm Jake, 30 male, and I need to tell you about the woman who gave birth to me but never learned what being a mother actually means. This isn't a story about reconciliation or forgiveness. This is about boundaries, consequences, and the difference between biology and family. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood before everything went sideways. I was a normal kid living in a normal house in suburban Ohio. Dad worked construction, mom stayed home, and I was their only kid. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Backyard barbecues in summer, Christmas lights every December, the works. Then Dad died when I was 9. Heart attack at 42 while working a job site. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. Mom received a decent life insurance payout, around $300,000 after everything was settled. That money should have set us up for years, given us breathing room to grieve and rebuild. Instead, Mom met Derek about 8 months after Dad died. This guy was everything my father wasn't. Unemployed, smooth-talking, the kind of dude who wore gold chains and drove a car he couldn't afford. He moved into our house within 3 months of them meeting, treating the place like his personal hotel. I watched the life insurance money disappear like water down a drain. New car for Derek, weekend trips I wasn't invited to, expensive dinners at restaurants while I ate cereal for dinner. Mom transformed from the woman who packed my lunches and helped with homework to someone I barely recognized. By the time I turned 11, the money was mostly gone, and Mom had a choice to make, me or Derek. She chose Derek. The conversation happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I remember because it was my friend Tyler's birthday party that weekend, and I'd been excited about going. Mom sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where Dad used to help me with math homework, and explained that she and Derek were moving to Florida. "It's a fresh start for us," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Derek's got some opportunities down there, and we need this." I asked the obvious question. "When are we leaving?" Her face did this weird thing, like she was trying to figure out how to deliver bad news in a way that wouldn't sound as horrible as it actually was. "Sweetie, you're going to stay with Grandma for a while, just until we get settled and find a bigger place." Even at 11, I knew what that meant. A while was code for indefinitely, or possibly forever. And bigger place was never going to happen, because Derek didn't work, and Mom had blown through all the money that was supposed to be for our future. "I don't want to stay with Grandma," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to stay with you." Mom reached across the table like she was going to hold my hand, then stopped halfway. "This is what's best for everyone right now. Grandma loves having you there, and you love being with her, right?" That was the manipulation tactic she'd use for years afterward, whenever anyone questioned her choices. Taking what I enjoyed, spending weekends at Grandma's house, playing in her big backyard, and weaponizing it into justification for abandonment. I stayed silent. What was I supposed to say? I was 11 years old with no power, no voice, no choice in any of it. They moved to Florida 2 weeks later, packed up the house, sold most of the furniture, and left. I watched from Grandma's front porch as the moving truck pulled away with everything I'd known my entire life inside it. Mom promised to call every week, promised to visit soon, promised this was temporary. Every single promise was a lie. Living with Grandma wasn't the problem. Grandma was amazing. Helen was 73 when I moved in, sharp as a tack, with hands weathered from decades of gardening and a smile that made you feel like everything would somehow work out. She'd been a school teacher for 40 years before retiring, taught 3rd grade at the elementary school 3 blocks from her house. Her home was a 2-story craftsman with creaky floors, a massive oak tree in the backyard, and a guest room that became mine by default. The first night, she made my favorite dinner, meatloaf with mashed potatoes, without me even asking, set my place at the table like I'd always eaten there. When I got quiet during dinner, she didn't push me to talk, just said, "You're safe here, Jake. Whatever you're feeling is okay." That's when I cried for the first time since Mom had told me she was leaving. Just broke down sobbing into my mashed potatoes while this elderly woman I'd only seen on holidays held my hand and let me fall apart. Grandma never badmouthed Mom, which I appreciate now more than I did then. She'd just say things like, "Your mother's dealing with her own struggles," or "Sometimes people make choices that are hard to understand." Real diplomatic, never putting me in the position of having to defend someone who didn't deserve defending. She made sure I had everything I needed. School supplies appeared before I asked. My favorite snacks were always in the pantry. When I grew out of my shoes, new ones showed up without any drama about money. And she came to every single school event. Concerts, science fairs, parent-teacher conferences, signed permission slips, helped with homework, learned to play video games so we could do it together, even though she had no idea what was happening on screen. Meanwhile, Mom's phone calls became less frequent. Once a week turned into every other week, then monthly, then whenever she remembered. The conversations were always the same. Her talking about Florida, about Derek's latest opportunity, about how she missed me and would visit soon. The visits never materialized. Not for my 12th birthday, not for Christmas, not for my middle school graduation, Always some excuse about money or Derek's job situation or traffic or weather. By 13, I'd stopped expecting her to show up for anything. Stopped holding my breath every time the phone rang, hoping it was her. Stopped checking the mail for birthday cards that never came. I built a life that didn't include her, because including her meant constant disappointment. Grandma filled the gaps without making a big deal about it. When I made the basketball team in 8th grade, she was in the stands at every game, cheering louder than parents half her age. When I struggled with algebra, she found a tutor and paid for it without mentioning the cost. When I wanted to try guitar, she bought me a used one from the pawn shop and signed me up for lessons at the music store downtown. She was everything Mom should have been, doing it all on a fixed income while raising a kid she hadn't planned on raising. I asked her once, I was about 14, why she was doing all this for me when Mom was the one who should be handling it. We were sitting on the back porch watching fireflies, drinking lemonade she'd made from scratch. Because you deserve someone who shows up, she said simply. And I love you. Those are the only 2 reasons I need. That conversation lives in my head, rent-free, even now. The simplicity of it, the certainty. No complicated explanations or justifications. Just love and showing up. The 2 things Mom had never figured out how to do. Grandma died 3 weeks before my 16th birthday. Stroke while gardening, the thing she loved most besides teaching and me. Neighbor found her collapsed near her tomato plants, still holding the watering can. She was unconscious when the ambulance arrived and never woke up. The hospital kept her on life support for 2 days while I sat in that sterile room, holding her hand and begging her not to leave me like everyone else had. But her brain was gone, and the doctors explained that even if she survived, she'd never be herself again. I was the one who made the decision to remove life support. 15 years old, sitting in a hospital room with social workers and doctors, signing paperwork that would end the life of the only person who'd actually loved me. The social worker kept asking if there was anyone else who should be involved in the decision, and I kept saying no. They asked about my mother. I told them she lived in Florida and probably wouldn't answer her phone. Grandma died on a Wednesday morning at 6:47 a.m. I was sitting next to her bed, holding her hand, when the monitors went flat. A nurse came in and turned off the machines, and just like that, she was gone. The second parent I'd lost, except this one had actually been there when it mattered. The funeral was the following Monday. Small service at the Methodist church Grandma had attended for 50 years. Maybe 40 people showed up. Former students, neighbors, ladies from her book club. I sat in the front pew in a suit borrowed from the funeral director because I'd grown out of my only dress clothes. Mom showed up halfway through the service, stumbled in wearing sunglasses indoors and clothes that were too tight, smelling like cheap perfume and stale smoke. Derek wasn't with her. Apparently he'd stayed in Florida for work. She sat down next to me without saying anything, dabbing at her eyes with tissue, even though I didn't see any actual tears. After the service, she cornered me in the church parking lot while people were giving condolences, put her hands on my shoulders like we were close, like she hadn't been absent for 4 years while her mother raised me. "Baby, I'm so sorry about Grandma," she said, voice dripping with performance. "I know this is hard, but maybe this is a blessing in disguise. You can come live with me now. Start fresh. Be a family again." I just stared at her. A family? Yes, I know we've had our struggles, but I'm ready to be your mom again. I've grown a lot, and I think this could be really good for both of us. Ready to be my mom again. Like motherhood was a hobby she'd taken a break from and could just resume whenever it was convenient. Like the 4 years of abandonment were just a minor gap we could skip over without acknowledgement. I pulled away from her hands. "I'm not going to Florida." Her face shifted, confusion mixed with irritation that I wasn't falling into line. "Jake, don't be difficult. You can't stay here alone. You're 15. The state's going to put you somewhere, and foster care is terrible. I'm your mother. You belong with me." "You haven't been my mother since I was 11, I said, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "Grandma was my mother. You were just the person who left." That's when she pulled out the guilt trip playbook. How she'd been dealing with so much after Dad died. How Derek had been there for her when she was vulnerable. How she'd needed time to heal before she could be a good mom. How she'd always loved me even when she couldn't show it. Blah, blah, blah. Every excuse was about her pain, her healing, her needs. Not once did she acknowledge what abandoning an 11-year-old might have done to me. Not once did she take actual responsibility instead of explaining away her choices with therapeutic buzzwords. "I made mistakes," she finally admitted, voice breaking in what I'm sure she thought was a touching moment. "But I'm here now. That has to count for something." "It doesn't," I said. "You're 4 years too late." A social worker approached before Mom could respond. They'd been hovering, waiting to talk to me about next steps. Mom tried to insert herself into the conversation, explaining that she was my mother and I'd be going home with her, that we just needed to work out logistics. The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, who'd probably seen every variety of family dysfunction, asked me directly if that's what I wanted. I looked at Mom, really looked at her. Saw the person who'd chosen a deadbeat boyfriend over her kid, who'd blown through life insurance money that should have secured our future, who'd made promises she never kept and showed up only when someone else's death forced her to acknowledge my existence. "No," I said to Patricia. "I don't want to go with her. I want to go into foster care." Mom's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, hurt, anger, indignation, and finally that martyred victimhood she'd perfected. "You'd rather go with strangers than your own mother?" Her voice was rising now, people turning to look. "After everything I've been through? After I came all this way? This is how you treat me?" "This is how you treated me," I replied. I'm just returning the favor. Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. Jake, are you absolutely certain? This is a big decision. I nodded. I'm certain. I'm not going to Florida. Mom tried for another 10 minutes to change my mind. Cycled through anger, tears, accusations, and finally threats. Said I'd regret this. Said foster care would destroy me. Said I was being manipulated by social workers who wanted to keep families apart. Patricia finally told her she needed to leave. Mom left making a scene, shouting about how the state was stealing her son, how this was illegal, how she was going to fight this. Everyone in the parking lot watched her drive away in whatever beat-up car she'd rented, leaving me standing there with a social worker and the ruins of my childhood. Are you okay? Patricia asked once Mom was gone. Yeah, I said. And weirdly, I was. For the first time in 4 years, I'd made a choice about my own life. It might not have been a great choice, but it was mine. And it felt better than being dragged to Florida to live with a woman who saw me as an obligation instead of a son. Foster care gets a bad reputation, and some of it's deserved. The system is overcrowded, underfunded, and full of kids who've been dealt terrible hands. But it's not universally terrible. And sometimes you get lucky. I got lucky. My first placement was with Tom and Sarah Bennett, a couple in their late 40s who'd been fostering for over a decade. They lived in a comfortable ranch house about 20 minutes from Grandma's neighborhood, with a fenced backyard and a dog named Bear, who was allegedly a Labrador but looked more like a small horse. Sarah was a nurse at County General. Tom was a high school guidance counselor. They had 2 adult kids of their own who'd moved out years ago, and they fostered because, in Sarah's words, there are too many kids who need someone, and we've got an empty house. They didn't try to be my parents, didn't ask me to call them mom and dad or pretend we were a perfect family. They were just there, consistent, reliable. Adults who did what they said they'd do when they said they'd do it. Tom helped me catch up in school after I'd fallen behind during the chaos of Grandma's death. Sat with me at the kitchen table every night, working through assignments, never getting frustrated when I didn't understand something. Sarah made sure I had a full physical, dealt with my asthma that had been ignored for months, and taught me how to cook actual meals instead of surviving on frozen pizzas. They came to my sophomore year basketball games, helped me get a part-time job at the grocery store where Tom's brother was a manager, made sure I had what I needed for school, never made me feel like I was a burden or a paycheck or a project. The system required regular check-ins. Patricia, my social worker, would visit monthly to make sure everything was going okay. She'd ask if I felt safe, if I had what I needed, if I wanted to discuss anything privately. Always professional, but genuinely seemed to care, whether I was drowning or swimming. Mom tried to contact me exactly 3 times during those first 6 months. 2 phone calls that I didn't answer, and 1 letter that arrived at Tom and Sarah's house through the foster care system. The letter was something else. 4 pages of rambling about how she'd made mistakes, but was my mother and I needed to forgive her. How she'd been going through a tough time, but was better now. How Derek had left her, and she'd realized what really mattered. How she wanted another chance to prove herself. Not once did she ask how I was doing. Not once did she acknowledge the 4 years of abandonment, or the fact that she'd only showed up after Grandma died. Just page after page of me disguised as remorse. Tom found me reading it at the kitchen table, watching my face get harder with each paragraph. You okay, kiddo? I handed him the letter. He read it silently, expression shifting from neutral to something I couldn't quite identify. Then he carefully folded it back up and handed it to me. What do you want to do with it? He asked. Can I throw it away? It's your letter. You can do whatever you want with it. I threw it away. Felt nothing. Just crumpled it up and tossed it in the kitchen trash like junk mail. Tom didn't comment, just squeezed my shoulder and went back to making dinner. That was the last I heard from Mom for years. The calls stopped. The letters stopped. She disappeared back to whatever life she was living in Florida, and I got on with building mine. High school passed in a blur of normal teenage experiences. Made the varsity basketball team junior year. Got my first real girlfriend, Amanda, who kissed me after homecoming and broke my heart 6 months later when she moved to North Carolina. Learned to drive in Tom's old pickup truck, failing the test the first time because I was so nervous I forgot to check my blind spot. Tom and Sarah never made me feel like I was temporary. When I asked if I could paint my room, they said yes and helped me pick out colors. When I wanted to try out for track in addition to basketball, they rearranged schedules to make sure someone could get me to practice. When I got a B- in chemistry and was disappointed, Sarah told me she'd barely passed high school science, and I was doing great. They were at my high school graduation, front row, cheering louder than necessary when I walked across that stage. Sarah cried. Tom took about 1,000 photos. They took me out to dinner afterward, at a steakhouse I'd never been able to afford, and Tom made this speech about how proud they were of me, and how excited they were to see what I'd do next. I'd been accepted to Ohio State for mechanical engineering, had scholarships covering most of it, combination of academic merit, need-based aid, and a grant specifically for foster youth. Tom and Sarah offered to help with the rest, but I'd been working at the grocery store for 2 years, and had saved enough to cover what the scholarships didn't. The day I moved into the dorms, they helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs. Sarah made my bed with new sheets she'd bought specifically for this. Tom assembled the desk chair I'd bought used on Craigslist. Before they left, Sarah hugged me tight and said, "You call if you need anything. Anything at all." "I will," I promised. "We're proud of you, Jake," Tom added. "Your grandma would be too." That hit different. He didn't say, "Your mom would be proud," because we both knew she wouldn't be. She'd abandoned me and missed every milestone. But Grandma, the woman who'd actually raised me, would have been proud. That's what mattered. College was the first time I felt like I was building something that was completely mine. No one telling me what to do, no social workers checking in, no system managing my life. Just me, my classes, and a future I was constructing one decision at a time. I worked part-time at a campus bike shop, made friends with guys on my dorm floor, joined an intramural basketball league, and got my butt kicked by pre-med students who played like their lives depended on it. Dated a girl named Claire for most of sophomore year, until we mutually agreed we were better as friends. Graduated in 4 years with decent grades and a job offer at an engineering firm in Columbus. Tom and Sarah came to the graduation. Sarah cried again. Tom took more photos. They'd become the closest thing to parents I had, and I made sure they knew it. Met my wife Emma at work. She was an architect working on the same project, a new sports complex that required coordinating structural engineering with design aesthetics. We spent 3 months arguing about load-bearing walls and sightlines before I realized I was looking forward to our meetings for reasons that had nothing to do with construction specs. Asked her out after the project wrapped. She said yes. 6 months later, I knew she was the one. 2 years after that, I proposed. She said yes again, and I married her at a courthouse with Tom and Sarah as witnesses because neither of us wanted a big wedding, and Emma's family had disowned her for marrying too young. We built a life together, bought a small house in a decent neighborhood, had our first kid, a boy we named Thomas after Tom. Second kid, a girl named Helen after Grandma. Emma went back to work part-time while I climbed the ranks at the engineering firm, eventually becoming a project manager overseeing multi-million-dollar builds. Tom and Sarah were grandma and grandpa to our kids in every way that mattered. Babysat when we needed date nights. Showed up for birthdays and holidays. Were in the delivery room when Helen was born because Emma wanted Sarah there for support, and I wanted Tom there because having him present felt right. This was family. Not biology, not obligation, but people who chose to show up consistently because they loved you. People who celebrated your victories and helped you through your losses. People who didn't keep score or hold grudges or disappear when things got hard. Mom wasn't part of any of it. Didn't know I'd graduated college, gotten married, had kids, bought a house, built a career. She'd made her choice at my grandma's funeral, and I'd made mine. The chapter with her in it was closed, and I had zero interest in reopening it. Then Facebook happened. I'm not a big social media guy. Created a profile mostly so Emma could tag me in family photos and because Tom kept sending me friend requests after Sarah taught him how to use it. Posted maybe twice a year. Photo of the kids at Halloween. Picture of a finished project I was particularly proud of. Privacy settings were tight. Friends only. No public profile. Nothing searchable beyond my name and current city. But apparently that was enough. The message request showed up on a random Tuesday evening. I was sitting on the couch half watching a basketball game while Emma put the kids to bed upstairs. Picked up my phone to check the score and saw the notification. Message request from Rebecca Sullivan. My mother's name, though I still thought of her as my mother rather than mom because mom implied a relationship we didn't have. Stared at the notification for a solid 30 seconds, thumb hovering over the delete button. Curiosity won. Opened it. Jake, I found you. I've been searching for years and finally figured out how to use this thing properly. Technology is not my strong suit, lol. I miss you every day and think about you constantly. I know we have a lot to talk about and I'd love to reconnect. Can we talk? I'm living in Ohio now, actually not far from Columbus. Would love to meet for coffee and catch up. I've changed so much and I think you'd be proud of me. Please respond. Love, Mom. Read it 3 times, feeling absolutely nothing except maybe mild irritation at the LOL and the presumption that I'd want to meet for coffee like we were old friends who'd lost touch instead of a mother and the son she'd abandoned. Emma came downstairs. Kids are out. Thomas tried to negotiate for 3 more books, but I held firm at 2. What are you looking at? Handed her the phone without comment. Watched her face as she read, the slight narrowing of her eyes, the way her jaw tightened just a fraction. What do you want to do? She asked, handing it back. I want to block her and pretend this never happened, I said honestly, but some petty part of me wants to respond first. Then respond, Emma said simply. She sat down next to me, curling her legs under her. She spent years not being there. She doesn't get to show up now and act like she's owed anything. If you want to tell her that, tell her. I stared at the message for another minute, then started typing. You missed birthdays 11 through 18, ages 19 through 30, my high school graduation, my college graduation, my wedding, the births of my 2 children, your grandchildren, my first house. Every single milestone that mattered. What exactly is left to miss? Sent it. Felt my heart rate kick up slightly. Adrenaline response to confrontation even through a screen. 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing. Message came through less than a minute later. I made mistakes, but I'm your mother. I carried you for 9 months. I love you even if I didn't show it well. People can change. I'm different now. Please give me a chance to prove it. The audacity of that response was almost impressive. I carried you for 9 months. Like biological gestation was some permanent trump card that erased abandonment. I love you even if I didn't show it well. Like 4 years of absence was just a minor communication issue. I'm different now. Like that mattered when she'd had 15 years to reach out and had only done so after finding me on social media. Typed my response carefully, wanting to be clear and final. You were an egg donor who chose a boyfriend over your son. Being a mother is more than biology. It's showing up. It's sacrifice. It's putting your kid first even when it's hard. You did none of those things. Grandma was my mother. Tom and Sarah became my parents. You were just the person who left me to be raised by better people. I'm blocking you now. Don't contact me again. Hit send. Blocked her immediately before she could respond. Blocked her on everything. Facebook, Instagram I rarely used, LinkedIn, anything she might try to use as a workaround. Emma squeezed my hand. You okay? Yeah, I said. And I was. No regret, no guilt, no second thoughts. Just relief that I'd finally said what needed to be said and cut off her avenue of access. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, Emma got a message request on her Facebook. Same name, Rebecca Sullivan, with a profile photo of mom looking significantly older than I remembered. Apparently, she'd found Emma through my profile before I'd blocked her, seen we were married, and decided to go around me. The message was a novel. Emma showed it to me that evening after the kids were asleep, her expression somewhere between disbelief and anger. Started with, I'm sure Jake has told you terrible things about me, and went downhill from there. A whole saga about how she'd been young and stupid when she left me with grandma, how she'd been in an unhealthy relationship she couldn't escape, how she'd wanted to reach out 1,000 times but had been too ashamed. Then pivoted to how she'd changed, found therapy, gotten her life together, how she was sober now. Apparently the substance issues I'd never known about were supposed to make me sympathetic, how she'd spent years trying to find me, and was devastated I'd rejected her. Ended with a plea for Emma to help facilitate a relationship for the sake of the children. Apparently my kids deserved to know their grandmother, and I was being selfish by keeping them from her. Never mind that she didn't know their names, their ages, or anything about them beyond the fact that they existed. She's delusional, Emma said flatly. Does she think I'm going to advocate for a woman who abandoned my husband? Like I'm going to help her guilt trip you into a relationship you clearly don't want? Block her, I said. I don't want her anywhere near you or the kids. Emma blocked her without another word. But we talked about it that night, lying in bed while the house was quiet, about what family meant and what we owed to people who shared our DNA. My parents disowned me for marrying you, Emma said quietly. Said I was too young, that I'd regret it, that I was ruining my future. Haven't spoken to them in 8 years. When Thomas was born, my mom sent a card to your office because she didn't have our home address. I threw it away without reading it. Because blood doesn't mean anything if the relationship is toxic. You ever regret cutting them off? I asked. No, I miss the idea of having parents, but I don't miss them specifically. They made their choice. I made mine. We both have to live with it. She rolled over to face me. Tom and Sarah are better parents to me than mine ever were. They actually show up. That's what matters. She was right. Tom and Sarah had become parents to both of us. Treated Emma like a daughter from the moment I introduced them. Were at the hospital when both kids were born. Babysat every week so we could have date nights. Taught our kids to bake cookies and threw birthday parties and showed up when life got hard. That's what grandparents did. Not send manipulative Facebook messages to strangers, trying to guilt their way back into lives they'd abandoned. The final attempt came about a month later, and it was the one that made me genuinely angry. Tom called me at work. Jake, I think you need to know something. Your biological mother contacted Sarah and me through the foster care registry. Apparently she tracked down our information and sent a letter to our house. What did she say? I asked, already feeling my shoulders tense. A lot. Basically accused us of stealing her son, said we'd turned you against her, claimed we'd prevented her from having a relationship with you. Also said we owed her grandchildren's contact information because she has a right to know them. The sheer audacity of that knocked me sideways. She'd abandoned me, failed to fight for custody, disappeared for over a decade, and now was accusing the people who'd actually raised me of theft. The people who'd given me stability, love, and a future were somehow the villains in her revisionist history. What did you tell her? I asked. Tom's voice was dry. I told her I'd met her exactly once at a funeral 16 years ago, and that the only thing I'd stolen was a kid who desperately needed someone to give a damn about him. Then I blocked her address and filed harassment concerns with our local police in case she tries showing up at the house. I'm sorry she contacted you, I said. This is my mess. It's not your mess. It's hers. We just wanted you to know in case she escalates. He paused. Sarah wanted me to tell you that we love you, and nothing your biological mother says changes the fact that you're our son in every way that matters. That hit me harder than I expected. Had to take a second before responding. I love you guys too, and I'm sorry she dragged you into her drama. We're not dragged. We're exactly where we choose to be, in your corner. Tom's voice was firm. If she contacts us again, we'll handle it. You've got enough on your plate with work and the kids. After hanging up, I sat in my car in the office parking lot for 10 minutes, just breathing. The woman who'd abandoned me was now harassing the people who'd saved me, trying to rewrite history where she was the victim instead of the villain. That night, I wrote her one final message. Not through social media, she was blocked everywhere, but through the foster care registry, where she'd found Tom and Sarah's information. One last communication, to make absolutely clear where I stood. This is the last time I will address you directly. You abandoned me at 11 years old. You chose your boyfriend over your son. You missed my entire adolescence because you couldn't be bothered to show up. When you finally showed up, it was only because your mother, the woman who actually raised me, had died. And even then, you saw me as an obligation, not a person. I chose foster care over you, because strangers treated me better than you ever did. Tom and Sarah became my parents because they understood what you never learned. That being a parent is about consistency, sacrifice, and showing up even when it's hard. You don't get to show up now and claim victim status. You don't get to harass my family. You don't get to demand access to my children or my life. You gave up those rights when you drove away 15 years ago and never looked back. I have nothing for you. No forgiveness, no relationship, no second chances. You were an egg donor who taught me exactly what not to do as a parent. That's your only contribution to my life. I'm successful, married, and happy, specifically because I learned to build family with people who chose to show up. Do not contact me again. Do not contact my wife. Do not contact my foster parents. Do not show up at my home or my workplace. Any further attempts at contact will be considered harassment and handled accordingly. You made your choice. Live with it. Sent it through the registry and immediately filed paperwork to have my information removed so she couldn't use that avenue again. Also contacted a lawyer to draft a formal cease and desist letter. Wasn't taking chances that she'd respect boundaries without legal consequences attached. Emma read what I'd written, nodded. Good. She needs to understand this is over. Think she'll stop? I asked. Probably not. People like that don't stop until they're forced to. But at least now you've been clear, and you've got legal backing if she keeps pushing. She was right on both counts. The cease and desist got sent to the last known address we had for Mom. Some apartment in Cincinnati according to the postmark on the letter she'd sent Tom and Sarah. Whether it found her or not, I didn't know and didn't care. I'd done my part. That was 6 months ago. Haven't heard from her since, though I sometimes wonder if she'll show up at some random moment. Outside the kid's school, at my office, somewhere public where she thinks I won't make a scene. If she does, I'll make the scene. Because at 30 years old, with a career I'm proud of, a wife I love, and kids who'll never know what it's like to be abandoned, I've learned a critical lesson that took too long to internalize. You don't owe toxic people access to your life just because you share DNA.